Welcome to this edition of Diligence Inside America's Boardrooms. I'm TK Kerstetter, and I'll be your host for today's show. Today, we're going to be talking about the Conference Board C-Suite Outlook Report for 2022. And joining me is Steve Odland, who's the president and CEO of the Conference Board. He's also the former CEO of Office Depot and AutoZone, and currently sits on the board of General Mills. So welcome, Steve.
TK, great to be here.
I know that you've been doing this study for approximately 23 years, and you survey 1,600 global CEOs and C-suite executives. In a second, I'm going to ask you a little more about that, but I really enjoyed reading the C-Suite Outlook 2022 report, which I believe came out in the end of January. And before we get to the results of the U.S., I was hoping that you could explain a little bit more about the survey to our audience.
Well, as you said, it's been a Conference Board staple for over 2 decades. We have nearly 1,000 CEOs in the survey and nearly 1,000 other direct reports of the CEOs. And this is a global survey that is done each year. We do this in December, and we try to get to the issues that are top of mind for CEOs, management teams, but it's also should be top of mind for boards of directors. These are the strategic issues that companies are facing in 22. One comment, though, is that this precedes the war in Ukraine, so we don't have all of the most current reactions of that. But I suspect some of these results are very consistent with what we would find today.
Well, that's certainly one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you. I figured if it's important to the CEO, it better be important to the board as well. So let's dive in and let's talk about the U.S. first. I'm hoping that you can sort of give us a feel for the top 3 business threats that the report identified for U.S. CEOs and C-suite executives.
Yeah, and they're all interrelated. The top 3 threats are labor shortages, inflation, and then supply chain disruptions. And I suspect if we did that survey today, number 1 and 2 would change places. It would be inflation and then labor shortages and supply chain. You can't go to the grocery store today without seeing inflation before your very eyes. A lot of this was created by the disruptions from government shutdown of economies during COVID, and then the fits and starts that have happened as economies have turned back on, businesses have turned back on, and those supply chains have come back. So inflation is raging. We thought it to be, and CEOs thought that a lot of this was going to be temporary, or that's what we heard from central banks last year. But in fact, this has become stubborn, and I think it's been exacerbated now by the Ukraine war, especially with energy, metals, and food. Supply chain disruptions continue, especially in anything related to microprocessors, computer chips. Most of them globally are made in Taiwan. A lot of issues with that, and clearly you can't just turn on a new supply overnight. It takes tens of billions of dollars and years to do that. So these are the primary things, TK.
Yeah, I would imagine with your comment on the front end with the war, there's probably a good chance that geopolitical would have, maybe moved up, that threat level just a little bit. But the ones that you mentioned are certainly very real to doing your business planning for 2022.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, if you have employees in Ukraine or Russia or customers in those areas, this is more acute for you. But the shortages that are coming, especially in food, the exports from Ukraine in wheat and corn are considerable, particularly for the poorer nations in Africa and Asia. So this could produce some food shortages and famines in certain areas, and so it's becoming acute. Obviously, that's putting pressure on the global supply and inflation.
Yeah. Well, I want to give the Conference Board a shout out. If anybody that follows you know that you have done some excellent work and webcasts on the geopolitical and all these actual issues that are CEO issues. So if anybody's not familiar with that, I would certainly recommend them doing a little research because you guys have some great programs.
Yeah, thank you.
When you ask the CEOs across the globe to rank ESG priorities, and the US CEOs seemingly didn't blink when it came to a quality listing. And let me make sure I have this right. So it ranked you gave them 9 options of which to rank these ESG priorities. And US ranked economic opportunity equality number 1, racial equality number 2, and gender equality number 3. No other region of the world had equality issues ranked 1, 2, and 3. So your thoughts on that?
Well, look, businesses and boards of directors need to be thinking in the context of the society in which they operate. And so these are U.S. CEOs, even though they're multinational firms. These are acute issues in the U.S. And you just have to look back to, over the last couple of years, the social and civil justice issues that have been front and center. And so, not surprisingly, that's number 1. The surprise, not the surprise, but the key difference in the U.S. is racial equality, which is, of course, interwoven with that. But that is not on the radar screen anywhere else in the world. And so you go to Europe and you ask European multinational management teams or boards of directors, about racial equality, and they just look at you. And of course, you go to China, it's the same thing. They're not the same thing because, we are in the U.S. a nation of immigrants and dealing with all of the social tensions of that. So that's, not surprising, but it is each company is a microcosm of society, and everybody's wrestling with how to deal with these issues.
So, Steve, in your CEO days, and that now in your also in your corporate board days, how do these when you have your board meetings or you have a strategic planning retreat or something like that, how do these conversations come about? And explain the different side, the CEO side and the board side, on sort of working through these issues, particularly when they come sort of after the plan has been done.
Yeah, if I could juxtapose it, TK, to 20, 30 years ago, where primary, the shareholder primacy was the focus. These kinds of issues took a backseat. In a multi-stakeholder world where we're worried about customers, employees, owners, communities, environment, these issues come to the fore, and as they should. And so these are the issues that boards of directors should be focused on. They are the issues that CEOs are focused on, and that's how to balance all of these things. They are multi-stakeholders, and you can't just satisfy one at the expense of the others. You have to deal with all of these. And so these questions, these issues are integrated in all aspects of strategy that boards and management teams are looking at. Their issues, they're part and parcel to risk profiles and so forth. And, all the dynamics related to to a strong culture and therefore strong performance.
Yeah. Well, I certainly believe that even though it's stressed a lot today, I will tell you, and I'm one of the more senior people around, this idea of taking care of all these constituencies is not new. Okay. No. I'm sure in your role in AutoZone or in Office Depot, you recognize that a balance of these things was important to your long-term success, but it certainly wasn't stressed, and people weren't so focused on it. But I just want to make sure that people know that this is not something new to CEOs, that they've been dealing with this balance of these issues to be successful for some time.
No, they're not new. And, CEOs have known this, boards have known this, but for the first time, shareholders now know it. And so it's like a discovery for them. Oh boy, you need to have employees engaged, and you need to take care of your customers in order to produce shareholder value. And so it actually brings all, 3 sets of a focus on the same issues for the first time, and it's really a great thing, actually.
Yeah. So, Steve, we only absolutely touched on the surface of the good information that's in this report. So, people that are interested, where can they get a more detailed highlights or even a copy of the full report?
Yeah. So, we just hit the headlines, actually, and you can find the details of all the insights from this research on our website, tcb.org. You mentioned the geopolitical situation. We've also established a geopolitical hub where we are updating daily the issues that management teams and boards should be looking at in the context of the Ukraine situation.
Well, Steve, I can't thank you enough for joining us in your busy schedule. Again, I recommend the report and some of the conference board programs. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
And that will conclude this session of Diligence Inside America's Boardrooms. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back again next week when we take another look at a critical topic that'll help you be a better board member or committee member. So we'll see you then.